Hello, everyone. So, in this little solo cast, I'm gonna talk about an approach or a way that you can look at gentle spirituality and what that even means for me, right? Like, what is my perspective on this? So, there's a time and place for the different types of spiritual practices that anybody can embark upon. The more gentle practices, as well as the most strenuous practices. Like, for example, different rituals, ceremonies, and initiations that everybody goes through. And something that I've stumbled upon a lot, and even within myself, like from other people around me, and even within myself, is that you have to go through a very strenuous experience for you to be able to either be worthy enough or to just experience, right? Like spirit. And everybody has a different life experience, right? Everybody has a different path that they would go for. And for me, individually, my experience, my findings are these. Um, it's been very nice to experiment with more gentle practices. And I have done more strenuous things before, which I can totally talk about my experiences on those ceremonies and rituals on a different podcast or different episode, because this one is talking about just the ones that are gentle, right? And what have I gone through that's more strenuous? Well, I've done a San Pedro ceremony, and even though that one's a very beautiful one, it does still have some components that might be a little strenuous as well. I've also done sweat lodges or temazcales, which have definitely been the most intense experience for me. Everybody has something different with that, right? And then I've also been with hape, and that is one that I truly respect. I really respect tobacco in the form of hape, and it's one that I would not take lightly for myself. That's just what I've experienced, right? And on my personal history, the things that I've gone through, I've realized that with my life experiences, sometimes the things that I've gone through that have been more strenuous have put me in this state of survival, have put me in a state of this very primitive bodily experience, which to one extent, that's what they're meant to do. And on another note, that I've seen when compared to my gentle experiences with connecting to spirit and with ceremonies and rituals, that I don't feel the same connection to spirit through the more strenuous ceremonies and rituals than when I've done the more gentle ones. And again, this is just my perspective, this is just my experience, and I would invite anybody listening to this to just dabble, experiment, and change things up for yourself to see what resonates best for you. Because I do know that there has been some lessons and some things that have come from the harder experiences, right? Have come from those strenuous experiences that I've gone through. But they take time for me to be able to sit with and integrate. Because something that I have learned from potentially teaching science, one of them is the different ways that rock and stone can move. So there's elastic changes that can happen to rock, and there's plastic changes that can happen to rock. Rock is a very sturdy substance, and we wouldn't think of rock being able to be stretched or bent or anything like that, because no human being has the strength as of right now to be able to manipulate rock and stone in that way. But there are natural forces that can affect rock and stone in a very elastic way, in the sense that you can stretch rock, you can compress rock, and it could come back to its original state, or in a plastic state where you can stretch rock or compress it in a very, very fast and very intense way. And usually, when it's fast and intense and a very sharp change, it fractures the rock, it fractures the stone. No matter how strong the rock is, it's going to create a fracture where it can never go back from. And that's the way that I personally have experienced these like cracking opens, right? Like I can't come back from it. And it's not to discourage anybody from participating in those, because from those cracks, I've been able to let lotus flowers grow. It takes time, but they do. And if anything, this is just to let you sit down and really ponder upon, am I ready? Am I ready to sit in these ceremonies? Am I ready to sit with these primitive experiences? Because on the other side, on the gentle note, I have gone through initiations and activations that are very gentle, that move through the heart and solely through the heart, that move through love and solely with love, that have instantly connected me to spirit, that have instantly connected me to that sense of connection, of unity, of oneness, of being with and connected to a higher power, that I wasn't able to feel during those ceremonies where it's like a very hard and sharp change. And I'm grateful for everything that I've gone through, because it made me appreciate the gentle approach even more, and the gentle rituals, and the gentle spiritual experiences, and the gentle connections that I created for myself. And it's not as intense, so maybe, right, for you to feel and build that connection, it might take maybe a few times of you repeating this ritual and repeating this ceremony for you to sit and be like, oh, I feel spirit here, I feel it in my heart. And I've found that for myself, I would rather do a ceremony or a ritual that's more of a smaller scale, that's more gentle, on a more consistent basis, to build my relationship with spirit gradually over time, than to try to do something super harsh, super strong, all at once to find that connection. And I don't think that a lot of people appreciate that gentle build and that gentle connection that can really go a long way. Like, you wouldn't come up to someone on the street randomly and go in super strong, head first, let's be besties, even though I just met you. A lot of times, and a lot of people build these relationships gradually, slowly, little by little, day by day, conversation by conversation. And I feel like in that same way, you can look at your connection with spirit and your connection with you feeling the spirit within your heart, of how can you build this connection? How can you build this feeling in your heart? How can you be activated in love instead of in survival mode, right? How can you be filled with love instead of having to go to the depths, having to be thrown to the depths of the underworld, right? And I'm not saying that the underworld is bad, because in my experience, through my gentleness approach, I've been able to go into a cave, to the entrance of the underworld. And then I sit at the entrance of the cave and I get connected to the cave, to the entrance. And then the next day I take a couple steps inside and I sit there and I connect with my heart, with myself. And then little by little, I take another step further and I continue to go deeper into the cave. As long as I feel comfortable taking the next step, as long as I feel confident and supported and with spirit while I take the next step. Little by little, and next thing you know, I'm in the depths of the underworld, and I appeared in a loving way. I got there in a loving way. I got there being confident in myself. And I am able to get out, walking, sometimes crawling, but I get there and I can come back. versus just being taken and thrown into the underworld. So, this is just food for thought. And in the ways that I've been able to gently have a spiritual practice is just through the experiences that I've gone through and the rituals that I do that are tiny, consistent, beautiful to build upon layer by layer. And if you're listening to this, I would invite you to do the same. Like, do a 5-minute ritual one day and do it for a week. And then the next week, maybe put in another layer to it. That might make it longer, might keep it at 5 minutes, but just do what resonates with you. And not a lot of people or a lot of individuals value that. Like, make your ritual your own, as long as you're being culturally, apprehensive to an extent. Like, just what feels good for you, what feels comfortable for you, what can you do, what do you have the capacity to do on your own, what do you not have the capacity to do on your own anymore, and how can you build a gentle and authentic practice for yourself, by yourself, safely, right? So that's something that I would invite for you to think about, to do, to maybe investigate and research. But I just wanted to invite gentle spirituality to the conversation instead of having to do very hard things to try to find that connection. So I hope that this resonates and that you enjoy this little reminder. And if you do, I would invite you to just meditate on that, journal on it, and see what do you have to say to yourself on ways to gently practice spirituality. And with that, I'll let you guys go. And until next time.